Hello and welcome. I'm Liz Booker, literary aviatrix on social media, and I'm on today with author Robin Kardon, writing as R.D. Kardon. And I'm excited to celebrate the launch of her new book, the third in the Flygirl Trilogy, Flying Home, which comes out on February 21st, 2023.
No reason to stay on ground. Lift your hands and you can touch and fly.
Welcome back, Robin.
Thank you, Liz. I'm really thrilled to be here. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, we talked in June of 2021 when we discussed Flygirl, the first in the trilogy in the Aviatrix Book Club.
Yes.
So it's great to have you back to talk about book 3. But before we get into it, can you give us an overview of the first 2 books for anyone who hasn't had a chance to read them?
Sure. The first 2 books of the Flygirl trilogy are Flygirl and Angel Flight. In Flygirl, we're introduced to the main character, Tris Miles, who in Flygirl is a mid-30s something female pilot who integrates an all-male corporate flight department. And needless to say, she meets with some obstacles as she's pursuing her dream of the left seat. In Angel Flight, we find Tris at a different stage in her career, working as a charter pilot, and she's a captain now, and she is given the opportunity to compete for the position of chief pilot at her company while she is preparing to do a life-saving medical flight, taking someone from a remote area in Canada, Iqaluit, to the United States for medical treatment. Along the way, she gets into a relationship with someone who she ends up competing with. And also, Angel Flight, in Flygirl, the background issue that I address is discrimination and harassment in the workplace and the difficulty of being a woman in an environment that has been traditionally all male. In Angel Flight, the issue that I address is the difficulty of trying to pursue therapy and mental health treatment in an environment that does not encourage it. And in fact, as pilots know from having to get a first-class medical every 6 months, discourages it. And how she moves along in that world, dealing with her personal issues and her professional ambitions.
Yeah, and you did that so well. Both of those themes were so well delivered in both of those books. And I just want to say book 2, Angel Flight, was such a nail biter. I was just like along for the ride. I was so surprised. And yeah, you're holding that one up. And I want to also say I had a sneak peek at book 3, Flying Home, and it is excellent. And you just held the cover up. I don't have a copy of book 3 here, but I want to say like the covers are all 3 of them are beautifully done, beautifully branded. It looks great with the little pilot with her, I don't know what color hair she has in there, but I just always superimpose red hair on her because of you.
That's okay. That's fine.
Yeah. So tell us about Flying Home. This is so exciting.
Flying Home is the end of the character arc for Tris Miles. We find her in a situation where she is, has to decide whether to leave the job that she loves at the charter company to go to the largest airline in the world, which I call Legacy Airlines because that's what it is. And on the promise of being able to influence the lives of thousands of female pilots and mentor them. Meanwhile, at her current company, in her position, her leadership position, she has a new female captain who has some challenges of her own. And she's also a point of view character in Flying Home that she's managing. And Tris wants to help bring her along and mentor her. And she's really stuck between 2 worlds. Do you leave a job you love on the hope of being able to have a greater impact? Or do you focus on what's right in front of you? And that's the professional challenge she faces. And it takes place in the week around September 11th, 2001. Right before September 11th, she and her crew fly to Edinburgh, Scotland. And there's quite a bit of activity around 9/11, which is the day that they're scheduled to depart for the United States. This is the first time that a novel has taken the reader inside the world of the pilot on one of the darkest days in United States history. We know what it was like from watching television, the horror of the towers falling. And I'm a native New Yorker. I was born and raised in New York. I remember when the towers first went up. So watching them fall was horrifying. The burning hole in Pennsylvania, the Pentagon on fire. But what was it like for pilots stranded thousands of miles from home, counting the losses they suffered, desperate to try and get a hold of their loved ones? And if anyone who was around on that day knows, particularly if you were in the airlines, which I was, that cell phone lines were completely jammed for over a day. You couldn't get through to anyone. You didn't know. How did they make it home? How did they fly home? What was life like for them when they got there? And that's the issue that I address. It's a message of challenge and a message of hope. How does what does that teach her? How does she interpret the horrible loss we all suffered that day and incorporate it into how she lives the rest of her life? And that's what Flying Home is about. Interestingly enough, when I'm asked about writing these books, one of the things I like to share with readers is I believe I wrote the first two books so that I would have the ability to write this one, because this was the important one. This was the one I was always going to write, the 9/11 book, because 9/11 was such a critical event in my own flying career. And so I believe that writing Flygirl and then writing Angel Flight and seeing the progression of my skills and abilities in both those books enabled me to write Flying Home.
Oh, I want to talk more about that in a minute, but I want to say you did that really well. We've been talking a lot. 9/11 has been coming up quite a bit in our books, not in the way, obviously, like you mentioned, that it's, you are in real time in a fiction novel, talking about what that was like from a pilot's perspective. So that's incredible for me. I have my own military experience and but again, it's like an inflection point for everyone who is alive, first of all, at that time in the world, pretty much. And then, you narrow those communities down, and many of those stories have been told, but yeah, the pilots, getting to see from my perspective as a pilot, so can connect in so many ways with Triss and her experiences as a woman in aviation, but then also to see this unique lens of what was going on in their heads and how they were experiencing that day. So really well done with that. I also just want to say that you kind of breezed over something that I thought was really excellent in this book. And that was the challenge of being in a leadership position. And they could all have been men, and you still have faced these challenges of two high performing people who are qualified for a job, and you're the one in a position to make decisions. Now you throw gender on that.
Right.
And a little bit of race too. I was in that position. I had 18 pilots working for me. I had 4 or 5 of them were women. And so I was constantly dealing with the perception of whether I was showing favoritism or, being
Right.
a fair and really conscientiously, truly wanting to do that job with integrity, be fair and unbiased. And so I identified with Triss in that position. You really did that well.
Thank you very much. I wanted to address a number of different issues in this book. And as you know, the character Janat Madden is Muslim American, the daughter of Iranian immigrants, first generation American. And I also wanted to share what 9/11 meant to her from her perspective. But you're exactly right. As Triss is deciding whether or not to leave her leadership position for the big airline and fly the big jets all over the world and influence the lives of all these people, she has to find someone to take her place. Does she choose the male, good old boy assistant who's a buddy of the owner of the company? Or does she choose the incredibly intelligent and talented, but brash and slightly abrasive, Muslim female pilot who, by the way, has a few secrets of her own that I think the readers will find interesting. So you're right. It was, as you know, she faces an extremely difficult decision. And I think readers will be surprised about the way it works out.
No, I think they will too. But before we leave that topic, a couple of things. You saw me have a big smile when you used the word abrasive. That was the word that my flight examining board, the men who were responsible for my training when I was a junior pilot, that was the name that they called me.
You might not be surprised to hear that I have been called that many a time myself. It is the nature of the beast in our world, isn't it, Liz? That when I always used to say, if I were a man in the environments that I was in where I was called abrasive, behaving in that way, they would cheer me and lift me up.
Exactly. Exactly.
But because of the source of the behavior and simply the source, not being male, being female, it was perceived in a whole different way.
Yep. That's okay. I wear it with pride.
Exactly, as do I.
And then the other thing is that just this whole what you kind of pointed at of like, do you hire the good old boy, or who is highly competent and very, very qualified, more than qualified,
Yep.
or the young upcoming, wanting to pursue diversity? This is a conversation that is happening right now all across aviation. I just talked to somebody in the aviation industry who's in that position right now. She's got the guy who is older and more than qualified, but because we're trying to promote more women, she's in this awkward position where she's like, that would be the easy answer, but maybe I'm going to do something different. It's just a really interesting point right now in our history.
I have a unique perspective on that, as you know, because after I left the cockpit, I worked for many, many years as an employment consultant. Literally taking employers, wanting to take them by the throat and begging them to consider more diverse candidates who maybe didn't meet the exact profile that they were looking for. But, asking them to lift up, women and minorities who may have been overlooked in the past. It is extremely difficult. And I'm not telling anyone anything they don't know. It is extremely difficult to get people to change their minds. It is extremely difficult to get people to change their behavior. It is extremely difficult to get people to take a chance on something that is not predictable when, in fact, they have a formula for what is.
Yep, I agree with that. And, I also left that conversation with my friend who was, in this conundrum. And, I was thinking, I hate making gender generalizations. Sure. I truly do. Because I don't like them being made about me. Because I typically don't meet any of them. But it is broadly talked about across, in the professional world, about the propensity for some men to oversell themselves and their qualifications to get to a particular position, and the opposite being true for most, quote, most women will undersell themselves. So I love that conversation thinking, okay, you are in this hiring position. You've got this man who's overqualified. You maybe have some women who are applying who are maybe don't have as much experience, but how many times did the guy get the job who was not ready for it? And so, if you're feeling badly about that in a leadership or hiring position, I just feel like you should let it go and do the right thing.
I'm sure you and I both have examples we could talk about for hours of sitting
Yeah.
in the cockpit next to someone who might have been in command, who was male and did not know what they were doing. So, it's not your gender is not a recipe for perfection in any field.
Right.
In any field. That said, I don't think either one of us would have gotten as far, given that aviation is male dominated, we never would have gotten as far as we did without the help of better men who were leaders, men who wanted to see a pilot advance and didn't care about anything else, just that they were a pilot. I know I wouldn't have. I mean, I wish there is not enough time for me to mention the names of all the men who helped me along the way.
Yeah, no, thanks for saying that.
Right.
We always kind of get stuck on these,
Yeah, it's
what didn't
important.
work, but that was the small percentage, and for me too, the majority of my
Right.
mentors and leaders were there to support everyone equally. And some of them worked really hard to help me out. So yes,
That's right.
yes to all of that.
That's
Yep.
right.
Couldn't do it without them.
Nope.
Well, what else do we need to talk about this book before we start talking about when and where we can find it?
It is an important book to me. It is, of the three, the most important because of the tremendous effect that 9/11 had on my flying career. And
what was that? What effect did it have?
I left a job where I had significant seniority and was holding a captain's bid at my home base on December 31st, 2000, to join a new airline on January 1st, 2001. And anyone who knows the airline industry is based on seniority is based on date of hire. I went right to the bottom of the list instead of being at the top. So after 9/11, I was in the first wave of furloughs. And I was able to get back in the cockpit again and again, and kept getting furloughed and furloughed and furloughed. And finally, I couldn't. And what happened on 9/11 had such a profound effect on me that, emotionally, I was angry. I really was angry. I was not in the frame of mind to, I needed a buffer, and I didn't get one, to continually be laid off, and have to go find a new job. And there I was, constantly going to the bottom of seniority lists, angry about what had happened, angry about the losses, angry about what it not only did to me, but to my friends. I had one of my dearest friends couldn't get a job in the United States. She had to literally go fly for Air Astana in Kazakhstan in order to continue flying. And I was not in a personal situation where I could do that. So it was a very, very challenging time. And so luckily, I had a previous career as an attorney. So I had an advanced degree that I could use in another way. And even though I left the cockpit, I never stopped being involved with aviation. I didn't continue flying professionally, but I did continue counseling pilots and other professionals trying to get jobs in aviation, and do to this day. And always knew I would write about the things that I experienced that were important to me.
Wow. Yeah. And that really comes through in the story. And while we're still talking about it, I did have a question. I thought that you've already mentioned it, so it's not spoiling anything. This Iranian character and how she experiences it from her perspective, from the Muslim American experience. I thought that was a bold move on your part. And I'm just curious to know, how you got into that perspective.
I will tell you what the impetus was to write about that. When 9/11 happened, I was flying for an airline called Midwest Express, which later became Midwest. They were based up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was flying the DC-9, which I was thrilled to have an opportunity to fly. And my crash pad in Milwaukee was 2 blocks away from a mosque. when I went back to work, I was actually on reserve on 9/11. So needless to say, I didn't get a trip. I didn't get a trip on the 12th, but I did go back to work on the 13th. We were actually one of the first airlines back in the sky in the United States. And when I went up to the crash pad, I saw that the mosque had been attacked. And I was just horrified by that. And I live in San Diego, California, where there is a huge Persian community. And many of the people that I know in that community, who either themselves, immigrated to the United States from Iran or whose parents did, talk about the effects of that on their community, all the time. As a matter of fact, one of the greatest compliments I've gotten about flying home, one of my Persian friends, who did help with a lot of context for this book, read it. She was an early reader, and indicated that some of the things that I had our Iranian American character do in the book post 9/11 were exactly the things that she did and exactly the things that she felt.
That is a high compliment.
And
Good.
I cannot imagine a higher compliment. It is extremely difficult as a writer to write a culture that you are not a part of. I can write the aviation culture forever, but ethnically, I can only write my own from personal experience. So I was honored when I received that compliment from her. But the impetus was the attack on the mosque in Milwaukee.
Okay. Well, interesting. It was a very, very interesting and unique perspective. And I was kind of glad that I got to see it through it was painful, obviously, but glad that I got to see it from that perspective and that you did that work. So just as a writer, I want to say, you do one of my favorite things that I talk about this. In fact, I think I've been posting authors notes on Sundays for the writers out there. They're just little 5-minute clips of my writing conversations. And I know I worked on one about Kate Quinn's book and talked about how much I love multiple perspective novels.
Right.
And you do that in all 3 of these, and you change up the characters, which is cool. We get to see each of these stories from Triss's perspective consistently, but then we get into the minds of your other characters. This was book 3 for you. And so you had a lot of practice. How does it feel like as a writer? Tell me about that.
It is the natural way I write. And when Flygirl, when I was finishing up the first draft of Flygirl, I got a lot of pressure from professionals in the industry who I respect to turn the book into a single third-person point of view, just hers. But it was very important to me, especially Flygirl, to tell the story from the perspective of Triss and the men that she was dealing with. I wanted people to see how they thought and why they thought what they were doing was the right thing to do. And again, I kept getting asked, what are you going to do? When a publisher wants to publish your book and tells you have to turn around and write it first person. And that's one of the reasons I published the way I did, which was through a hybrid publisher, because I needed to write the book the way I wanted to write the book. And Flygirl was 5 points of view. Angel Flight was 4, and Flying Home is 3. So as the series went on, I honed the multiple third person point of view technique. To tell a deeper story about each character.
Mm-hmm.
And Flying Home was the culmination of that. But to be honest, Liz, that is the natural way I write. I have never written naturally from first person. Never.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I've played with every possibility on the book that I do now. And I find I get better results writing in first person. I can really, really get deep into the character in my head without the psychic distance of, the third
Right.
person, just in the language. And that can always be changed later. But just, I think what Kate Quinn talked about is just like, if you're stuck in one person's head for the entire book, you're just so limited, and you
That's
really open up the world by getting into other people's perspectives. And that's one of the things I loved about these books too. I just wanted to say
Well,
all that
thank you.
stuff.
One of the criticisms I get of these books is that they're too short. That even though they're book length, fully book length, and they're structured correctly, in terms of technical specifications. The reader's like, oh, I wanted more of this character. I wanted more of this character. Now I've given everyone enough for the story that I'm telling. And I always think at a certain point, and this is one of the issues I have with literary fiction, which I love to read, is at some point, I think the author gets enamored with the sound of their own voice. And they keep writing long beyond maybe when the book should have ended, because they're just so thrilled with what's coming out. And I get that. And any published novelist will tell you that one of the hardest things to do is cut. Because why do you cut? Because you love it all, because you wrote it all. I hope I struck the right balance. I think I did. I'm proud of them. I'm incredibly proud of them, and particularly proud of Flying Home.
I don't think I would have offered that criticism, but I will say I could have gone along for the ride for a lot. I love a saga. I mean, to a point, especially when I'm getting to, there's a lot going on and I'm getting to see multiple perspectives. I will definitely go along for that ride.
Well, people who enjoyed Flygirl and Angel Flight will be happy to know that some of the characters they know, in fact, most of them make an appearance in Flying Home as I close all of their character arcs.
Yes, I saw that too. Very nicely done. Well, okay, we have lots going on. I know you do in terms of your book promotion and other events. So let's talk about some of that. Where can people find the book? Where can they see you in person? What events do you have coming up?
Flying Home is currently available for pre-order everywhere books are sold. Flygirl and Angel Flight are available for purchase in any format everywhere books are sold. You can see me on February 18th at the Southern California Writers Conference in San Diego, California, where I will be speaking. Actually, I'll be giving a session, an education session on Saturday called Prose at the Speed of Light, Writing a Page Turner. And that will be the first time that Flying Home will be commercially available. The official launch date is Tuesday, February 21st. And the official launch event, as you know, Liz, is at the Women in Aviation International Conference in Long Beach, California, where along with the Aviatrix Book Club and Aviatrix Book Review, I will be appearing at the signing table, and I will also be appearing at a special event being held at the Conference Hotel Restaurant Bogarts, which you can tell us a little bit more about, on the Thursday of the conference, where I will be meeting readers and doing a reading from Flying Home.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that event. And there are some exciting things happening behind the scenes. By the time this comes out, I hope it will be a sold out event, but that's happening on Thursday, February 23rd, on opening night of the Women in Aviation International Conference. It's at Bogart and Company, which is in the Long Beach Convention Center complex. And we have a great lineup, you included, of authors who are going to do 3 to 5 minute readings. We're going to have a little bit of fun with, raffling off some books and a social hour. It'll be catered. It's a ticketed event. And so hopefully everybody can see all that stuff on my social media for information. And then Robin is going to be at the book tables on the exhibit floor on Friday from 10:30 to noon and on Saturday from 1:30 to 3. So you can go buy the book, get her to sign it for you, and meet up with her there. Any other events we need to know about?
Not right now. I'm still in the process of scheduling, launch events. I'm focusing right now on the Women in Aviation International event, since that is the official launch of Flying Home. And have some local things going on March 5th, Sunday, March 5th from 2:30 on. I'll be selling and signing books at Warwick's, one of the oldest independent bookstores in the country, in La Jolla, California. And any event that I'm doing, you can find on my social media. I am at RD Kardon Author on all social media platforms, and my website is rdkardonauthor.com. So you can visit me there too.
And when you're there, you can sign up for her newsletter, which is
Yes,
excellent.
please do.
Yeah. Well, I just want to remind everyone how important it is for people to leave reviews when they read your book, because the reviews help books sell, help reach a broad audience. So make sure you pre-order, because that helps them get out there.
Yes.
And go back and review the book when you're done on Amazon, on Goodreads, or wherever you buy your books. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you, Liz, for your support of my work and the work of so many other authors. And any people who are listening to this who have already read my books, thank you very much for taking time out of your lives to read what I've written. I can't tell you how much it means to me.
Well, it took you a lot longer and a lot more work to produce that work for our enjoyment. So thank you for all the work that you did to make this beautiful collection of stories. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thanks, Liz.
Thanks so much for listening. I'd like to thank Shasta Ways and Michael Wilds of the Women's Soar Group for their help in producing this interview. The Women's Soar Group is a media company that gives women a platform to express themselves. Be sure to check the show notes for a link to sign up for the Literary Aviatrix monthly newsletter to stay up to date on news like Robin's book coming out, author events, and Aviatrix book club discussion groups. Blue skies and happy reading.